everybody, this is Matthew Poes with Poes Acoustics. So I've got Dwayne here. Dwayne, you've come, you set up these Christie projectors. We had a comment actually when I got these. Somebody said it was criminal that it didn't have Dolby Vision, among other things. And I want to cover this because previously we had also had an issue. You've probably seen these types of comments too, where people had felt that it was really unfortunate that the Kaleidoscape projectors, Kaleidoscape players
yes,
didn't have Dolby Vision. And they do now, but one of the arguments at the time was that when you look at the balance of compromises, Dolby Vision was a relatively minor thing to a high-performance theater. At least that would be my take, would be if we look at everything we need to achieve in a high-performance theater to give you a good experience that mimics what you would get, call it director's intent, or in a cinema. Dolby Vision can obviously make things better, but the Kaleidoscapes in higher bit rate, less compression, et cetera, was really a bigger benefit, which would be its value. Now, in the case of the projectors, it's a whole different story.
Right.
So there are Sony TVs, at least I know, have Dolby Vision. I think there's some other brands that have it as well.
Pretty much the majority of the brands in the U.S., TV-wise, are Dolby capable.
They have the Dolby Vision. Okay.
Yes.
Now, in that case, it's a closed loop system. You know how bright the TV is, and the manufacturers know that data can be put in it. You know what the black level is. You know what the colorimetry is, all of that. In the case of a projection system, you don't really know any of that, right?
Well, that's the thing. And in all honesty, even with the regular TVs, not all TVs that are Dolby capable, the Dolby engine does not know the actual display brightness. It doesn't actually know the display black level, et cetera, et cetera. It has generic values in it. I see. And it'll be the same thing for projectors. But overall, Dolby Vision is a preferred way for tone mapping because it is actually content creator approved. They get to see it and sign off on the actual tone mapping.
They know what's happening.
Exactly. Yeah, whereas with HDR10 and its tone mapping, including dynamic, it's an opinion, of course, because anyone can do whatever they want. There's no standards for it.
Now, is this true of HDR10 Plus too? Because that's a dynamic.
Yes, it would be similar in the same state where with HDR10 Plus, when you're doing the mastering process of it, you can see, okay, this particular highlight, I'm not seeing enough detail I want to invoke more detail into it. Same thing. Yeah. It'll be very similar to Dolby Vision.
So if we were to give a more balanced assessment, the MadVR doesn't support Dolby Vision, which for what it's worth, I've checked into this, it can't. It's not even a MadVR issue. My understanding is Dolby will not license video processors to do that at the moment. That's what Dolby told me. Yeah. And MadVR, actually, I think I should check with Rick to be sure, but I know Lumagen, actually, Jim told me that he's tried, he's gone to Dolby, and they've said they will not offer him a license. So he can't even get it. I thought I heard the same thing from Rick. I can check with him to be sure of that. Now, the projectors could be, in theory, but they're not. I mean, the reality is that I think Sony maybe has offered that now on their newest one. Or no?
They're ultra short throw. Plenty of them have Dolby Vision capable, so they have the license to do Dolby Vision. But Sony, JVC, Epson, the major big brands are not Dolby capable.
Yeah. So reality is Dolby Vision is not a very common part of projectors. Right. Do you think that there's a major loss from that? Like, are we in a position then where, skip the projector and go with a display?
If we're speaking of a projector attached to a MadVR or a Lumagen, more than likely, no, you're not missing anything. If we're speaking of a projector standalone, possibly. Yeah, it depends.
To say criminal would be an overstatement.
Correct. You're right. Yeah. It's not criminal. It's not like it's this gigantic difference between the two. It's just more so, again, with the tone mapping and that manufacturer's preference on it, on how they want to do their tone mapping. Yeah. That's the difference.
Now, I will say, I had checked in with, I should know the guy's name, and I apologize if he watches this video, but the guy that runs HD Fury, they had introduced a device that allows you to mimic
low-level Dolby Vision. You can activate it to send it, to pass it to the projector.
So I asked him about that. I told him I wanted to do that, and he goes, well, I got to tell you, we've done these comparisons. And he said, with streaming, it's really obvious. The streaming Dolby Vision looks a lot better than the HDR10. But with the discs, it doesn't. So he's like, you might not get anything out of this. And so he told me what to do to test it without his device, just because I have a Sony TV.
Right.
And there's a way to make it not do the Dolby Vision. So I went ahead and did that. And he was actually correct. With Netflix and some of the other video sources that were streaming based with it, there was a significant improvement with Dolby Vision on the Sony display. The moment I went to discs where I sent a Dolby Vision signal and then told it not to recognize it as that, there was no difference.
Well, when it comes to, it depends on what we're speaking of. Streaming is totally different than disc, of course, and the actual Dolby Vision version that is actually passing through.
Okay.
So when it comes to streaming, the streaming box or the display itself, whatever you're doing the app from, is actually doing the processing of Dolby Vision.
Right.
So it's missing the display brightness, the primaries of the display, black level, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, it's basically doing a generic guessing. Now, it may look more appeasing and pleasing to an individual, but that does not mean that it's more accurate.
More accurate, sure.
So you have to have a reference beside it to verify, okay, is this how it's supposed to look, or is it something's off with this?
Sure, that makes sense.
So yeah, so in most cases, what's called player-led Dolby Vision from streaming devices, they don't actually do it very well per the measurements. And when someone's going in and actually measuring how low-level Dolby Vision looks on it with actual patterns and stuff, it doesn't do a very good job.
Yeah.
The other version of Dolby Vision, which is called where the display is doing all of the processing, that's usually going to be better because typically the display has its correct information for, the brightness of the display, the primaries, even the black level, to assist the Dolby agent in creating the actual tone mapping properly for that unique display.
Sure.
So that's why it would look better. But in the case of what you're speaking of with projectors, and on the disc, it looks different it doesn't look any better on the disc compared to that. That's more so in basically Profile 5 versus Profile 7, which everything streaming is basically Profile 5.
Okay.
On the disc is Profile 7. So it's a totally different version. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to keep this one short.
Yeah.
Dolby Vision is not on projectors, not the end of the world.
Not the end of the world.
Yep. So thanks everybody for watching. Subscribe to my channel, like these videos or dislike them, but I prefer you like them. Comment. I'd like to see your comments below. Dwayne probably can help me answer some of the questions you have, and keep on. We got more coming. Thanks everybody.